Shut up and sit down.
It's great to welcome this week on Control Alt Delete Jonathan Fleming. So Jonathan, welcome, and could you tell us a little bit about who you are and where you are in the world?
Yep, certainly. I'm Jonathan Fleming. I'm the minister of St John's Church in Largs and Cumbrae Parish Church over on the Isle of Cumbrae. I've been down here since the October of 2017. Prior to that, I was in Erskine for 5 years as my first charge. And so here in a very different context and in very different times.
Absolutely. Very, very different times. We've started all of these conversations, what would be now, I think, 7 or 8 weeks ago. A couple of months ago, we were getting ready to lead worship on a Sunday morning where we'd all received information about, no home baking and things like that for the week coming ahead. So do you remember that Sunday, and where were you and what were you doing and what were you thinking at that point?
I was in St John's that Sunday, I remember, because over the course of that week, while things were starting to tighten up and we didn't know where things were leading, we knew that certain rules and regulations were starting to come into place. And the day before, on the Saturday, before Sunday worship, on the 15th of March, it was Sunday the 15th of March was the last time we were in the church. And on the 14th, the Guild were holding their coffee morning. And we're sitting there going, what are we going to do here? There's home baking, there's all this sort of stuff. We'd already just said the night before, on the Thursday evening, we'd actually said to folk, to the tea and coffee team, pre-packaged biscuits only, disposable cups. Make sure that we don't use any disposable cups, dishwasher at the ready, and so on and so forth. And then the question came, how do we do the coffee morning? And again, not knowing where we go, I just said, well, I was in the food trade before I was a minister. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I said to them was, look, you're all going to have to put your gloves on, aprons, this usual, passing the tray around, would you like a bit of baking? No, you've got to use tongs, get it on the plate, only you touch it. And it was all that thing of, almost like everyone feeling a bit like a leper. Yeah. They didn't know how to react. They really didn't know what to do. So on the Sunday morning, at the very beginning, I was saying that after, obviously when people came in the door, they were told to put their offering in the plate as they came in because the bags weren't getting passed around. On the day of the coffee morning, myself and a couple of volunteers in the church, we went round and took all the Bibles and all the hymn books out of the pews and moved them out the way and piled them all up. And everyone at that point they were skeptical. They're sitting there going, we don't know. Who's going to do this, that, and the next thing? And it was that thing of, well, I don't want it in my conscience, do you? And so on the Sunday morning, I explained why we didn't have this, that, and the next thing. And then before we knew it, Wednesday, Thursday that week, worship's off, and physical worship is off, and it's straight into, right, what do we do? But obviously, I think like many people over the course of the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there was writing in the wall because a couple of other denominations that already said they were stopping worship in the church buildings, and so the cogs are starting to turn as to where we would go.
Yeah. So where did you go? What was your first response?
Well, first response was obviously Zoom, which nobody had heard of beforehand, suddenly entered into everybody's life, and people had started using Zoom for various things. Mm-hmm. And so went on, downloaded it, had a wee shot of it. I had a meeting, I called an emergency meeting of our team from the living room in Largs, which is our community hub, where we offer a lot of support for people with issues that could be affecting their mental health and things. So we immediately said, look, we've been told that we're going to have to close our building down at some point. We need to get a telephone service provision put in place. And while we were exploring that, the idea of Zoom popped up because someone had mentioned it. And I was like, obviously technology is something that's second nature to me. And I'm like, maybe look at this. So I very, very quickly sent it on to my probationer, to my MDS. It's like, right, here's all we're all going to go for this. And then we discussed it and said, look, how could we use this if we have to use it for worship? So when we realised you could share the screen, when we realised you could use the telephone to dial in, we went, right, we're going with that. It's the closest we're going to get to getting some form of gathering. So that's So we went down the route of using Zoom. We prepare it, prepare the PowerPoints in advance. But we do the services live, and the first Sunday we had, we were bowled over with the number of people that joined us so quickly. First Sunday we were in, we had 78 participants, and that's steadily grown over the last few weeks. To the point where we're now having to pay for the larger meeting room because we're busting 100. So it's doing the job.
So is that people who would have come to church anyway? So you've got 78 people that would have turned up on a Sunday, or is that 78 people who, some of whom would have turned up on a Sunday, but now other people from different places and from the communities that you're ministering to, are they joining in too in ways that they maybe wouldn't have if in kind of physical church?
Yeah, absolutely, Stuart. I mean, we the very first Sunday, some churches were still catching up and working out where they were going. So people from neighbouring churches were perhaps joining us just to be part of something. What's interesting is St John's and Cumbrae worship at different times. St John's worships at 10 o'clock, Cumbrae worships at 11, and but I only preach in one place at one time. St John's and Cumbrae are worshipping at the same time just now because we're only doing one service, and so you've got a mix of St John's folk, Cumbrae folk, people who would have normally been there on a Sunday, but also a lot of people who would not normally be part of the service, who are from the community, who have come in and are joining with us as well. And some are doing it by telephone, some are doing it with just blanking their screen off and just using the audio. And that's been really encouraging. And it's lovely to see some of the names appear and you're like, oh, blimey. It's just lovely to it's very encouraging to see that it's tapping into people in a different way.
And you're also, that's going on Facebook too, isn't it? So that people can watch it back later on.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been able to use is the live streaming into Facebook, and that's been really, really helpful. Plus, we record it anyway, and the audio goes up into our podcast channels. And that's the beauty of Zoom. It's people are going to think we're on a commission. Say, yes, it does that, it does this.
I really wish I'd bought shares. I have to say,
it's phenomenal. But that's been brilliant, being able to have all of these different things. We've also very quickly, thanks to a couple of posts that have gone up online through various forums about using dial-in opportunities. So we're now using a dial-in service where people can dial a local number, and using Twilio, and they've been able to create a platform to let people dial in. One of the things we're actually looking at there is, because one of the issues that came up very quickly was obviously all the security issues that were surrounding Zoom. They imposed the passwords. And you couldn't undo it. So Palm Sunday, you've got people you've managed to get people coming to church, and suddenly they're like, "What's the password?" So we had to quickly broadcast. So the strange thing, we're having to broadcast the password to let people know what it is. But what was interesting there was, despite that little glitch, we still had a very good attendance. But one of the things that we're trying with Twilio now is using a wee bit of code. Is actually, if people press 1 when they dial in, it will do all the donkey work to get you into the Zoom room. Right. So it's just a case of, if they wait for 20 seconds, pauses are built in, so it punches in all the numbers. So you're not having to reveal any of the security information. It logs it in, and you can tune in through that. So we're trying that, and obviously then there's the option of the recording afterwards.
And I was really pleased with myself just setting up the message. That's I love. One of the things I've really enjoyed, and it's a thing I've liked for years and years and years, is the idea of creative misuse of things. Twilio's
I've lost you there, Stuart.
Creative misuse.
Sorry, I missed. You went blank just when you were.
Sorry, the idea of creative misuse of things. I love that. I've always loved it. The sports trackers came from an app that Nokia put on their phone years ago to do something else. And text messaging was the same. SMS was for engineers to send stuff. and it's great. We're talking about Twilio, which is a service basically for telemarketing.
Yeah.
It's a call centre app, and
It's
here we are, people are dialing in to listen to, services, church services. This thing is
for worship, press 1.
Yeah.
If you want to become a member, press 9.
But it's amazing, isn't it, how, in such a short space of time, really between 2 Sundays, we've gone from being a primarily physically gathered congregation to being a virtually gathered congregation. And in lots of ways, for you, that's been fairly seamless.
Yeah. We've been very,
a lot of work behind, a lot of work in that, but no,
we've been very fortunate in that it's been very good that both Douglas and I have had quite a lot of IT in our backgrounds, so it's a lot of it is second nature to us. But what's also been lovely about Sunday worship is we've been able to be a lot more intergenerational, and that's been lovely. And Douglas has been very much promoting this idea of inviting creative responses to what's coming up the following Sunday.
Okay.
So it's about this is the passage we're going to be looking at, setting a couple of questions and responding to a question, not just in written word, but whether it be photography or by writing a reflection or a video or whatever it may be. They all get emailed in, and Douglas collates them, or I collate them when it's my Sunday, and we put it all together, and then we're able to show that at the beginning of the service. Not quite like Tony Hart's gallery, but it's a bit like, and being able to talk through them and stitch it all together, and that's been lovely. That idea of not having the 15 minutes and then patting the kids out. It's been nice being able to have all the family together, and that's another thing in the participants in your Zoom room. One participant in some cases is 4, because you've got a whole family gathering around their television because they've plugged the laptop into the telly, and that's been really, really encouraging.
That's fab.
So that's been really good. But going forward, we're looking at trying to create a space for our young people to have an opportunity to discuss things, and we're actually looking at Fuller Youth Institute have created a great syllabus. It's called Faith in an Anxious World. And so we're looking at maybe doing that with our young people, just to help them make sense of what's been going on. Brilliant. And to sort of journey with them in that.
So has you're saying, rather than, the kids been in for the start of the service and then they go to Sunday school or to Bible class or whatever it's called, has that then changed how the service is? So has that changed your content? Has it changed the way that you maybe approach a sermon type slot? What are you doing with that? Or is it just that the media itself, the medium helps to engage children better because you're using more images and video and all that kind of stuff?
I think that has a large part to play in it. I think the interactive element of being able to see us physically, in the little, albeit a tiny snap in the corner, to know that there is a person behind all the stuff that's in front of you. It has changed our content, and it's changed our format. It's not the 4 hymn sandwich. It's more of a 2 hymn sandwich, so it's not a club sandwich anymore. But what you've got, we're using a lot more contemporary music. We're using music from New Scottish Hymns Band, music from Resound Worship. We're not really going down the road using a lot of public domain stuff, but people are saying how much they're enjoying the new music, as it were, because they're able to watch and read the words, and they're all muted, so they can sing along as much as they want, and not be embarrassed. But you can see them all, they pick it up and they sing along, and that's been lovely, because you're able to find there's so much beautiful music out there which you would never use on a Sunday morning because it doesn't translate well onto an organ or to a piano. You're able to use full bands. That's been really special. But also in sermons, you're not sitting there going, well, if I do less than 15 minutes, people are going to think they're being shortchanged. You're able to. I for one am being a lot more expository. I'm not sitting there clinging to my notes. And sometimes I'll be looking at what I'll maybe be at from something that's come up in the creative responses. You'll suddenly go, I'm going to there's something else in my mind. And that's been really good. And people have picked up on that, which has been really encouraging.
That's great. And
So I think that's
is that a kind of confidence thing then? Because I'm not sure. I quite often I joke about this, that you sit and someone reads the readings on a Sunday morning, you think, oh no, that's what that's about.
Uh-huh.
But it's not what the sermon's about,
No.
And at no point I'm going to scrunch up the sermon and throw it away and have a go at this is what I think it might be about now. But I find myself, I'm recording most of my stuff, but I do find myself as I'm going through it thinking, no, I'm going to go back and redo that in a way that I would never have done on a Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's one of the when we went down the road, because we didn't have the time to prepare and we didn't know where things were going to go. We made the commitment to start with live, and because there's the three of us, because there's Douglas and Gus, there was not as much pressure on us to deliver every Sunday, and it's been great. The three of us have been able to work together in a team, and that too's affected the format, in that we're all bringing different things to the table, and that's been really special. But what's been lovely is, sometimes when you're doing your own preparation, just like you're saying when you're recording, is when you're sitting and on that Sunday, maybe you're listening to one of your colleagues' reflections, and you finish it off and you go, I never thought of it that way. And that's been really special, where you're able to be fed some Sundays as well.
Have you been surfing around watching your colleagues? Is that a thing that you've done too? You're talking about being fed by other people, which is something we never get. I think ministers don't get to go to church very often. So that's a new thing for all of us. I think that we have that opportunity. So have you been taking that chance?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's been lovely to see. Some people are being a lot more consistent with delivering things, and whereas some are just on Sunday morning. But what's lovely is I want to watch them not just because I want my own sort of spiritual nourishment, but I want them to be encouraged that their efforts are being rewarded by people watching them, because I know for a lot of people this has been really, really hard, and it's taken people totally out of their comfort zone. And just to know that you'd be able to say to someone, I really got a lot from what you said. Thank you for making the effort to do it. I think that's really important for a lot of our clergy. They're genuinely sitting there fearful that people are missing out, or that people are not getting something from worship, whereas they very much are.
Yeah, and it's been fascinating to see people's confidence growing over the last kind of 2 months. I've been really encouraged that people have kept at it. Yeah, it'd be really easy just to say, no, this isn't for me. Yeah, and sometimes that first shove, the wee bit of pressure. But not everybody's gone for kind of down the online route, and I think one of the things that we're hoping to do is in a couple of weeks speak to somebody that just hasn't. They looked around at their parish and thought, there's no point in me doing this, because either nobody's got a device to watch it on, or the people are of an age where they're just not interested in finding out how to click 4 links to get to whatever it is I'm doing on a Sunday morning. So they've taken completely different approaches, which is fascinating.
Absolutely.
Because I think, you said earlier on that, you're pretty comfortable with technology. So in some ways, I guess this hasn't been frightening in that kind of way for you, and might actually have been really exciting. Whereas for other people, it's neither of those, it's completely terrifying. And, they just don't know where to start. Whereas you're thinking, I can do all of this stuff that I've always wanted to do.
Yes, absolutely.
I think to do it now.
That's been a large part of it. I mean, I think what I'm now thinking about, and this is the bit that's more nerve-wracking than bringing in the online worship, is how we go forward from here when things start to ease, and when eventually some form of physical worship is allowed and people are allowed to gather again in church buildings, albeit with a very heavily reduced number of people. And the image I've got in my head is almost, those 20, 30, 40 seats spaced out in front of you, and a huge telly behind you with hundreds of people in Zoom behind you. And it's, thinking, how does that look? And how do you bring these two things together? Because it cannot go back to the way it was. It must not. There's too much. There's been too much good has come out of that part of worship. It's brought the creativity out in people. It's brought people together in a way it would never have done before. And the very fact that, the church used to be known as something that was always laughed at for being 2 centuries behind everyone else. And suddenly we're using the same platforms as global conglomerates are using to connect with one another. Yeah. We cannot go back. No. We must not go back. We've got to keep moving forward.
So one of the questions that raises for me, and you've, because of the way that you've decided to tackle it, I think the question is probably slightly different. So you've continued with a gathered congregation. Worship is not the same, but broadly similar. So the jump back to real life, as opposed to virtual life worship, isn't huge. That they look the same in lots of different ways, except there's a person sitting next to you as opposed to on a screen next to you. Whereas I've gone kind of the other way, and I'm filming me sitting in my living room, and people are watching wherever they are. And we've done a bit of Zoom stuff through Holy Week and things like that. But that's different. And so the question for me then is, oh no, I've got however many people watching this that don't come to church on a Sunday morning. I don't really expect them to turn up. Some of them might, but might not. So does that mean that I then have to continue to do a separate thing and a different thing because we've now created 2 streams of church? So we've created basically an online fresh expression. Yeah. But that's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Because it's not quite the same as Sunday. It's not very different from Sunday morning, but it's not quite the same. And we all know, as soon as you film something, it triples the length of time that it takes. Yes. To because you've got to edit it and upload it and load it onto whatever platform and all that kind of stuff, which is a whole new level of anxiety, I think, on a Saturday, the kind of upload anxiety.
Is it going to go?
Is it watching it? Is it? Oh, no, it's failed again.
It's frustrating.
We've got, there's Open Reach fans all through Stonehouse just now, and I'm absolutely terrified that they're going to pull the plug when I'm trying to upload the service. Actually, what they're doing is upgrading again. So we're one of the rural areas that's getting the super fast put in. So that's what they're doing. So they're not unplugging anything, but I still have this dread that on a Saturday I'm going to be late, and it's going to be 7:00 on Saturday night, and I'm still trying to upload this 2 gigabyte file to Facebook or whatever, and it's not going to work.
It can be quite distressing. Because that's the thing though, it's a bit like when something happens 5 minutes before the service starts, and that people are inside waiting, and some of them are going, he should be in by now, or she should be in by now. Whereas, and it's a bit like that with this, it's a bit, that file should be uploaded by now. This is the time for me to start watching my service.
So I've got all night to worry about that and to get it to happen. You're live. Mm-hmm. So if it doesn't work,
it's kaput.
So it just doesn't work. That's the end of it, isn't it? It's like, the minister didn't turn up today. Yeah.
Worship's cancelled.
Cancelled, yeah. We'll try it again in half an hour.
Aye, exactly. It was when, obviously, the internet was overloaded at the very beginning of this, which is why I think all the Open Reach vans are doing the rounds. And in the run-up to Holy Week and during Holy Week, there were these periods of outage that would just happen. The internet would just stop. Yeah. And it happened at 5 to 6 one night during Holy Week, and the service was at 7:00. And it was that thing where I'm sitting in the house going, right, I've got a choice. I've got 75 meg broadband down at the church. Am I going down there with my gear to set up a studio in the vestry and do it from there? Or am I going to, hope that it doesn't conk out on me? And so there you go. You pack all your gear up. You've got your mobile recording studio. You're in the car. You're along, setting it all up, getting it all plugged in, wondering, is it going to work? Is it going to work? And it's really, because if it's conked out in the house, is it going to conk out down there? Is it the same problem? Yeah. But you're just trying to do everything you can to keep that presence going, because you've got no other option, because you're live.
Yeah.
But obviously, I know that both you and I we're both doing Cafe Church as well, and that's another worshipping community that would never, a lot of them would never come to church. Yeah. And it's been lovely for a couple of people who have joined in and started, and they've they've plucked up a load of courage to say something in the middle of it, and and they've been honest about that. They've said, "I've sat here, wondering should I say something," and it was when we were talking about. It was actually after the Cafe Church. It was almost like the tea and coffee time afterwards, but we drink tea and coffee throughout the whole thing. But it was that thing of this one person who had been joining us for quite a while felt more comfortable being able to talk about things from the comfort of their own bedroom. And they felt safe and they felt able to say it. And afterwards, the affirmation that they received from everyone else saying, we really appreciated you saying what you said and so on. It's, suddenly they feel happy to be a part of things. And that, for that one person alone, I just don't want any of this to stop, because we're reaching people that we would never have reached otherwise.
Yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic, isn't it? Even though people are talking and it's still face to face, there's something that allows for just a little bit of disinhibition. It allows people just to say something, because at the end of the day, you can turn it off.
Yep.
You're not left in the room with the person that you've just said this to.
Yeah.
You're going to turn it off and they won't be there anymore, which is very different to a kind of group setting in real life, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You mentioned the living room earlier on, so can you tell us a wee bit about that? Because that's a fairly new initiative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys.
We opened that up last September. We were very aware of a number of people in our area that were struggling with issues that if they had no intervention or any sort of signposting to help them, things would go on to have an adverse effect on their mental health. And it wasn't just young people, it was a lot of people in the community who are dealing with issues surrounding bereavement, loss in general. It's not just death, it can be divorce or someone moving away or whatever. Financial issues. Everyone assumes that everyone in Lags is loaded, whereas there are parts of Lags which are in the bottom 20% of most deprived areas in Scotland. And so we wanted to respond to that by creating a space where people could come in, have a listening ear, a non-judgmental a conversation. And while there'll be a lot of things we don't have the answers to, the skill set within our volunteer team allows for people to be pointed in the right direction to get the help they need. We've got over 45 volunteers, and from all walks of life, without whom the living room wouldn't exist. We are nothing with our volunteers. They are the living room, and we're just in the background helping, and just doing a lot of the core work in the core team. But to know, we do a hot report for every person that comes in the living room, and when you see the people that we've been able to work with and the difference that these volunteers have made in the lives of people who have walked through the door of the living room, it's absolutely incredible. And so, in terms of what's happened since COVID-19 erupted, we had to close the building, but what we've been able to offer is telephone support. Okay. So, again, some people who may have never walked in the door of the living room are able to pick up the phone. Yep. We have again another bit of technology that have been used for business. We're using a virtual landline. So all that happens is we've bought the number. It's a local number as far as they're concerned, but in the background we can shuffle around who receives the phone number, and it's £6 a month, and we've got 5 operators who can operate a phone. It's incredible. Yeah. And we're also working very closely. Douglas, my probationer, he's also a first responder, so he's been involved in, although he's not doing anything in that capacity, he is helping in the community resilience in Lags. And when he's out delivering prescriptions and things like that, when there are people who are maybe not the same as they were when they were delivering the prescription the week before, we call the living room team. Listen, go and phone this person, just make sure they're all right, just check in. And we've been able to offer that sort of support through the living room very discreetly, just to make sure that people are okay. And that's one of the things we're looking at, is how, obviously we're partnered with Care for the Family, and we're partnered with Christians Against Poverty. And so our training for our Christians Against Poverty volunteers got cancelled because of what's happened, and therefore one of the things we're looking at trying to do there is they're wanting to offer online training to do it. So what we'd like to be able to do is offer our courses online in the short term while we can't gather, and also for care for the family to be able to run some of their things online and try and get some groups together, because both Douglas and I, we're trained facilitators for the parenting groups. We did a few days down in Manchester, and where we got our wee certificates for that. So we'd like to be able to offer stuff like that online. Especially one of the things they offer is a program called Left to Their Own Devices, which is about parenting in a digital world. And just now, I don't know why, but I get the feeling that might be quite prevalent. And so just about not demonizing technology, but just saying, here's some ways in which you could be a bit effective parenting in that digital world. So the living room itself is going through its own little period of transition because of it too. Yeah,
it's amazing, isn't it? I've said this to other people, that the Church of Scotland has been talking about for years and years and years, that it needs to change, that, we've had Radical Action Plan after Church Without Walls, after, all that kind of stuff. We should all set up a fresh expression by the end of this year. And we all did it in half an hour one Wednesday.
Yeah.
And that's where the name for this podcast came from. The Control-Alt-Delete is what you force quit. It's not a choice. It's when everything stops working, you have to press it and start again, kind
Absolutely.
of thing. But it's been fascinating to see how that rebooting of the church has happened really quickly. That everything's kind of just reformatted, and it all feels quite familiar, and yet it has all of these, I suppose, unintended consequences. I think, we all probably started off from a point of what can we do to support the people that already come. But actually, what we've done is opened up church to a whole range of different people who never come or couldn't come or didn't want to come. But all of a sudden, we're sitting in their living room or their bedroom.
That's
weird, isn't it? It's really quite, when you think about it like that, it's quite,
It's extraordinary. I mean, what I think the saying is, necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah. And so it's been great to see how people have propelled themselves into this creative mode. Yeah. And what I think's also been interesting is the number of people who have the means to connect and are choosing not to.
Yeah,
that's also very interesting. Okay. Where you are wondering, now that they're not having, it's where you ask, what is the priority for them? Yeah. Is it turning up in a building? Is it the social element rather than the spiritual element? There's a lot of questions that come out of that. And so there are a number of people who are very obviously missing from worship. And you're like, right, well, I can't do any more than I'm doing. So if that's down to their choice. And you can only hope that they're watching Reflections in the Key and BBC One.
Sure. And that, that in itself is brilliant. I was talking about that. I spoke to Sheena, who appeared on that
that's right.
a couple of weeks ago. And that in itself, to have religious programming on a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock is that's an entirely new experience for loads of people. And the numbers they're getting are phenomenal.
Yeah. It's really good. And that's been lovely as well, because I think the Reflections in the Key, putting the religious programs back on the television again, beyond Songs of Praise, which has also had its own renaissance. Yeah. It's so different to what it was in days of yore. And it's allowing people to see that the church has changed in many ways, and there are people who are oozing with creativity and beautiful wordsmithery and all, and wanting to share that in new and innovative ways. And I don't think it's going to do the church any harm whatsoever. Yeah. But it's that question of when normality returns in some way, shape, or form. Are we going to be able to? Are people still going to appreciate the place of that in their TV schedules and so on, and not just sort of go back to the beginning? Yeah. Tom Rayner, he's who I've been following a lot online recently. He did a seminar called The Blank Slate recently, and I tuned in on the webinar, and he was saying a lot of churches at the moment feel as if they've hit the pause button. Mm-hmm. But we cannot treat it like a pause button. It has got to be the reset button. Because if you unpause, it's a bit like, I don't know if you've, when you use when you use like Sky Plus, or you use a DVR, digital video recorder, and that thing, when you pause it, if you haven't recorded it, you lose all the stuff that happened before, even though you might want to go back and get some of it. The minute you hit pause and carry on, all of that stored data, it disappears.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the risk that we have with people in this situation. It's the minute we hit play and forget everything that's happened before. If we've not, like what we're doing just now, recorded it, mulled it over, taken different perspectives and looked at how we strategize going forward, a lot of beauty and a lot of opportunity will be wasted.
I have the sense that that's really interesting. It kind of picks up on a part of the conversation. I spoke to Scott Burton a couple of days ago, and we were talking about contemplative prayer and ministry. Just being. And how difficult that is in today's society. And this is giving people an opportunity just to be for a while, and how uncomfortable that can be. But we're kind of reflecting that the Reformation, in some senses, did do what you're describing. It pressed pause. Mm-hmm. So all of that stuff, all the kind of contemplative material, exercises, literature, practices, just got chucked in the bin.
Yep. For
years and years, and it's taken us 400 years to rediscover some of that in parts of the church.
Yep.
And you're right. So some of that, if we just scrub out the last 2,000 years and start again with a blank slate, that's not particularly helpful, because even in this new digital form, I've got lots of people on my Facebook timeline who are inviting people to Compline. It's 9:30. Who wants to do evening prayer?
Yeah.
You're kind of thinking, when on earth would that just wouldn't have happened?
No.
It just wouldn't.
Nope.
And somebody's just lighting a candle and leading folk through evening prayer. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it's truly special, and that's the other thing, though. I think it's enabled a lot of people to participate in worship that wouldn't have participated before, and that's been lovely. Where people have obviously asked a member of the congregation, or in our case, people who are in our worshipping community online, who we know have got creative skills and have offered. We put a thing on Facebook saying, if you'd like to be involved in the service, drop me an email and we'll make a list up and we'll ask people to be involved. And there's one gentleman who has a background in drama, isn't part of our congregation normally, and we were able to invite him to do something live in the service. And one other woman who she's a member of our congregation in Cumbrae. She lives in Worthing most of the year and has a house in Millport. And we were able to bring her for her to do a reflection from her house in Worthing and connect with our Cumbrae family. And that's beautiful.
So Cumbrae, so there's an island in the middle of the Clyde that's part of your parish.
Uh-huh.
Can you get there at the moment?
Yes, I can. I'm allowed over because I'm on the core team for the. I'm on the core team for the Millport support group. Right. So Douglas is doing resilience work here, and I'm doing work over there, right. And so I'm helping remote control the support group. So we've got 47 volunteers. Delivering prescriptions, shopping, and all the other things that they're needing as a sort of satellite hub for the North Ayrshire Council. Right. And so we're working very closely with the authorities there, and that's another example of the church is not trying to do something on its own, and that's what's been lovely. Loads of organisations and loads of churches are doing it. They're not sitting there going, well, what are we going to do ourselves? What can we help support and take further afield? And that's been really, really special. It's allowed everyone to see that the church wants to be there for them, and it's not looking for anything in return. They just want to be your friend.
Yeah. You might tell me you're not annoyed that you can't have services in Cumbrae because you just built a new church.
Don't get me started. It was that thing when I was back in the building. Just before lockdown really set in, and I was picking up some equipment. I was picking up our Zoom camera and various other things because I knew that they would come in handy. I don't think they know I took it and brought it over here, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, they'll be thankful because it's let me do some video reflections. But that's a brand new building sitting there. But what's been really good is the building's been able to help the community response. If things have been delivered or things are needing sorted out, that we're able to use that. We also have we have a project that we do with the local primary school which is next door to the new church, which was a plant to plate project.
All right.
So we've got 17 raised beds, and we've been growing vegetables and things and herbs, and we were able to say to people, they're there, go and take them. So apparently our cabbages were second to none, so that's been really nice. But what's been lovely is the support group members who are green fingered have gone in and have piled it in with new stuff to grow. So there's going to be fresh fruit and vegetables. No, not fruit. Well, tomatoes are fruit. Fresh tomatoes and potatoes and everything, and they'll be available for the wider community to use.
That's brilliant.
And that's been lovely. That the building is still very much there as an integral part of this whole service, and that's been lovely. So it gives us a bit of comfort to know that it's not like they're just gathering dust after spending 1.1 million quid on it. It's a very expensive storage unit.
Yeah, and I think at least yours is getting used. Mine's locked.
Aye.
And we've not been in. Well, that's not true. We collect for the local food bank on a Sunday, and that's the only time that it's open. And people are literally just dropping off in the vestibule, kind of
drop
thing.
and run.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the St John's is like that. I mean, St John's opened up for the blood donations. We've always, our hall's always been used for that, and so we were really pleased that we were able to do that.
Yeah.
But the sanctuary is just lying there, and it was that thing. I go in once in a while just to check that if there's any mail or anything come through. Anyone maybe dropped in a donation. We live in hope, and so and then you go into the sanctuary just for a couple of minutes, and you just stand there, and you're like, I wonder what will be the new norm in here, because I think we're already looking at. I know there's been a lot of discussions about the place of pews in sanctuaries going forward, and all these different things. How do you social distance when the back of a pew is essentially a handrail? Mm-hmm. There's all these different concerns. So there's a lot to be thinking about. But amongst all of the uncertainty, there is, as we said, there's a load of beautiful stuff that's come out of it, and we can only hope and pray that continues.
Yeah. You showed us one of your fancy bits of kit, and one of the questions that we've been asking everybody is, what on earth are you using to do this?
Well, I was very fortunate that I upgraded my laptop just before Christmas. So I'm Apple through and through. So I'm running everything on a MacBook Pro. Mm-hmm. I have that connected to an old 19-inch television, which is my second monitor. Oh. So I'm able to see myself. I'm able to see myself or see the speakers while I'm doing this. I'm using my USB microphone. I've got my Navaris mic, nice. And which is very good price on Amazon, by the way. That's me. So I'm using we're using Zoom, and we're sharing all of our other stuff through PowerPoint. And when we share the screen in PowerPoint, we're doing it all 16:9, so it's all widescreen, and everything we're doing is high definition. Yeah. And while it's even with a almost brand new MacBook Pro, the fan is well and truly whirring by the end of it, because it's obviously using a lot of processor power, but it's coping well. And I think that's been one of the other things. I think that it's not just in Sunday services, where a lot of churches are, obviously moving forward with using screens and various other things to be part of worship. I think the provision of IT for us in our homes as ministers and other worship leaders is going to have to be something we're not good at. It's not a case of going for the bare minimum, saying, oh, you're only sending emails and doing the occasional PowerPoints, we'll just get you a Celeron processor. We need to start looking at showing that these are investments where if this ever arises, we need to know that they can cope.
Yeah, and training to use all of that.
Absolutely. I think that's been great. I think it's been lovely to see how many people within different communities have got skills that we never knew they had. Yeah. I mean, in Millport for our support group, we've got one gentleman who did IT support for 3 large software firms. Wow. And so it's that thing when you're sitting there, you feel really cheeky saying, listen, can you do all the pivot tables for Excel? Because the last time I did a pivot table was in 1999, and
I don't even know what that is.
Well, what's been brilliant, we're having to record all of the incidents that happen in the island, and so we've got this humongous Excel spreadsheet, which I was very proud of getting up and running. And then the council were asking for specific information, and they were saying there must be a way of automating this. And Dean was like, "There you go, it's done." And I'm sitting there going, I can't even remember how he would have done that, but it's all there. One click of a button and the report's generated. It's incredible. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah,
and people. You said earlier on about people who were absent. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've, it's kind of followed me through my career. I always used to wonder how people didn't know things, because we sent them 4,000 emails and flyers and all that kind of stuff. And it's not until I think somebody needs it or wants it that they realise that it's there. I had a lovely experience last week where my wife and I were out walking the dogs, and somebody who comes to church every week said to me, "So what are you doing with your time now the church is shut?" And you're kind of thinking, this is like 6 weeks in to this. Yeah. How can you not know the answer to that question? Because I feel as though, I'm posting every 5 minutes on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and all that kind of stuff, and yet those aren't places that she's looking. So she didn't know.
There was a story yesterday. I was hearing Douglas was out delivering prescriptions, and he was chatting to one church couple from the church family, and he was saying, you can access the services online, and the woman's response was, "The only line I've got is the one I hang my husband's drawers on." But she wasn't aware of the telephone dial-in service, so he was able to explain that. But it's amazing how. One of the things we've tried, we also went down the analogue route of saying to the newspaper in our town, the Lags and Millport News, any chance you could put a thing in telling everyone the different ways in which you can connect to us. So that's been done. And hopefully for those people who are not online but still want to read the paper, will look at it and go, "Oh, I didn't know that." And so we can only hope that will happen.
Yeah. So what's next? You've continued lots of things that you were already doing. You've moved into some new bits and pieces. Are you looking forward, thinking, I'd quite like to try this? What's the next thing that you think?
I would like to try and share perspectives with very similar to what we're doing just now, and I'd love to be able to talk with people who I've got to know over the years and know that they have very unique skills and have been involved in a lot of creative and innovative things in the church before this, and to try and showcase a wee bit of the creativity that's available in the world and in the church, not just within the Church of Scotland, but friends who are in the States and further afield, and just to sort of broaden the conversation and saying to them, what they're doing and how they're responding, but also having an opportunity to talk with people about the ways in which there is help for various other situations that are out there. I'm very conscious of the fact that that lockdown is having such an effect on people's mental health. And while I'm not planning on having online counselling services, as in sitting there and podcasts of me and someone opening their heart up to me, being able to have people from organisations that are doing various things just now, and how they're doing it in the midst of lockdown, just to let people know that these services are there, and that'll be a lot more through the living room rather than through the church, but also letting people know that that the church is where the church is, not just the Church of Scotland, but where the Christian church is just now, in how things are progressing and how they're responding to it, and how they see the future and to the impact that this has had on it, because I think it'd be important to hear that from. I think it's always better to hear these things straight from the horse's mouth, than you saying, well, according to this email or according to that website. It's better to get it from someone who is in the know.
Yeah,
and hopefully these people will be prepared to do that on record.
That's always the danger, isn't it? Committing yourself to something. Yeah, and I think, but if anything, we've been provided by us with a space, and I think it's much easier to have that conversation when nobody knows what's going to happen next. So everything's speculation. Whereas sometimes I think we get bogged down in this is how it is, and it's really difficult to change that. Or, looking ahead, it's just really difficult to see how things might change. So all of a sudden, we've been freed from all of that stuff. And
I think the other part of it is, I think one of the other areas is pastoral care. That's another part of it which is difficult. One of my challenges is I have next to no phone numbers for the members of my congregation, because GDPR doesn't allow it necessarily unless you actively seek to get these numbers. And so when you're trying to prepare for online worship, you are doing funerals. I mean, the funerals have not stopped. I've had umpteen since lockdown, which are very emotionally draining as it is, especially with the distress that you're seeing in the families that are going through this time. Then you're trying to sort of catch up with people, and I think that's been one of the things you're constantly. This is one of the big negatives of this time, and it's that you have I do have a tendency to worry that I am not doing enough, and that I'm letting a whole lot of people down, and that there are people there who are expecting that phone call, but I have not got the means to do it.
Yeah.
And you're relying very much on, as you should be, your elders whose primary task is the pastoral care of the congregation. You can only hope and pray that they are picking up the phone, or when they're out doing their days, well, they can now do unlimited exercise. There's no excuse. They can go for a walk, and they can, from the wall, they can say, "Are you doing okay?" and give a wave if they're out in the garden. You can only hope and pray that that's happening, because the last thing I want, after all the energy that all of the clergy and ministry teams and worship teams across the world just now, is for people to come back at the end and say, the church wasn't there for me during this.
Yeah.
That's my one fear.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that hasn't changed in some respects, has it? That's something that's around all the time, and it's related to that. The story I told about that, that woman just didn't know, kind of thing. That it works the other way. How on earth would we know? A lot of the time, you kind of, well, you never phoned me, and well, nobody ever told me.
Yeah.
There's the two sides of that, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it doesn't stop you worrying that.
No.
Because that's a primary part of being a minister is to care for the people that have been put in our charge. And
and Presbyterianism, I mean, there's no Presbyterianism without guilt, is there? It's that. I mean, we went round at lockdown. We'd actually just prepared all of our little folders with the communion cards for the following month. And so they're all sitting down in a shelf down on the left, because the roll keeper would have not been a happy bunny if all of them had been binned. So they're all in envelopes for the different districts. But we then replaced them with little calling cards, where we asked all of the elders to put a calling card through every door saying, here's our phone number, and here is the ministry team's phone number. And we thought the only way we could actually on some way guarantee a communication is if they pick up the phone and speak to us. And that's very much the case for everything. I mean, I think that's the only way you can actually do it, because there will always be people that will slip through the net if you try to do it for them. They've got to come and contact you. But what's also been nice, I don't know about you, Stuart, it's when people have phoned up. I've had 2 elders phone up just to phone and see how the man's family is.
Yeah.
And that's been so nice.
I've had exactly that, people leaving things on the doorstep and all that kind of stuff. It's just lovely. And just people, especially I think around kind of funerals and stuff, folk realise how difficult that is, not just for the family, but also for us. And I've had a number of people just kind of phone up and just say, I know you had a funeral today. Are you okay?
Yeah,
how you
that's
doing?
lovely.
It is. It's great. It really is. Even
And
a bottle of single malt once in this.
Oh, aye. So if anyone's listening from Jones or Cumbrae, my address is.
Yeah, but it is. I think that idea, though, that if anything, I kind of wrote a piece on Facebook last week. I just woke up one morning with just a bursting sore head, and I think I was just tired, apart from anything else. Which is, some of this, spent all day in the computer and all that kind of stuff. But people often, and I wasn't moaning and I wasn't fishing for sympathy. I really wasn't, a little bit. But it's amazing how many people just drop me a message, just say, "How are you? You okay?" And I was okay. I was fine. I took ibuprofen and I was all right. But people are concerned about one another, and I think one of the things that I've been really impressed by is just how much folk are looking out for each other.
Yeah.
And noticing, things that they probably wouldn't have noticed before, or were just far too busy to do anything about.
Yeah.
That people are doing that. They are picking up the phone to each other and saying, how are you? Or dropping off a cake, or whatever it might be. And it's lovely. And if anything, I hope those are the kinds of things that continue.
Yes.
I think we'll work out how to do church, but actually, if we're going to care for each other and look after each other a bit better, then it's got to have. I'm not sure anything's worth what we're going through, but if we come out at the other end of it being kinder, that's surely got to say something about how we coped with.
Oh, very much so.
We were in.
I think you're right. I mean, I think when I was speaking by audio link to the Scottish Parliament last week, and I was doing the Sign for Reflection there, and that's what I was talking about was care and compassion in abundance. That's exactly what's happening, and people being more concerned for their neighbour than they've ever been before. People who are actually, they actually now know their neighbour.
Yeah.
They maybe lived next door to them for years, and they now actually know their name and they know a wee bit of their story, and they're looking out for them, and that's beautiful. And I think that that's something, again, that's another part which we just never want to lose. The awareness of other people around us and their needs has really developed, and that clarity of vision is something which we never want to return to.
Brilliant. That sounds like a good place to stop. That's a lovely, hopeful note to finish on. So thanks so much for joining us.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Shut up and sit down.